Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
Always.
So, lately, you've probably been hearing a ton about big tech and politicians,
Right.
especially when it comes to free speech and online censorship. It seems like it's always in the news.
Yeah, it's a pretty hot topic these days.
For sure. So, we thought it'd be interesting to take a closer look at this whole situation. We're going to be diving deep into an interview with Chris Pavlovsky, the CEO of Rumble.
Rumble.
Yeah, you know that video platform that's been making waves as like the champion of free speech? They're kind of positioning themselves as the alternative to YouTube.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to see what he has to say about all this big tech drama.
Sounds juicy. What are some of the highlights?
Well, one thing that really jumped out was his take on big tech trying to like mend fences with the new Trump administration.
Oh, that's right.
Eh.
It is kind of ironic, isn't it? Like Meta, Facebook, and Instagram, they spent years moderating Trump's content, even suspended his accounts,
Yeah,
and now they want to work with him.
right. Talk about awkward.
Makes you wonder what's really going on behind the scenes.
Well, the interviewer in the original piece pointed out that Trump is known for, never forgetting a slight. So can big tech really win back his favor after all that?
Hmm. Good question. It's a classic example of how companies will try to align themselves with power, no matter what, especially when it comes to influencing policy and regulations. You know,
Right. They want to make sure the rules of the game work in their favor. Makes sense.
absolutely. It's all about protecting their interests.
Okay, so speaking of big tech and controversies, remember that whole Hunter Biden laptop
Oh,
story?
yeah, that was a big one. Definitely added fuel to the whole big tech censorship fire.
Right. And that's where Rumble really saw an opening. They kind of positioned themselves as the platform where you could say whatever you wanted, no matter how controversial it was. In fact, they even hosted Trump on their platform back in 2021.
Yeah, I remember that. They were definitely trying to capitalize on the whole free speech angle.
So now Pavlovsky is saying that there should be consequences for big tech's past actions. What do you think those consequences should be?
Well, that's a tough question. It's a really complex issue. How do you punish a company for censorship without, like, infringing on their own right to, moderate content on their platforms?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Where do you draw the line between promoting free speech and preventing the spread of misinformation?
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance. And of course, the whole debate ties into Section 230.
Section 230, could you remind us what that is again?
Sure, it's basically this law that shields online platforms from being held liable for, like, the stuff their users post. Like if someone posts something defamatory or whatever, the platform itself isn't legally responsible.
Gotcha. So there's this whole back and forth about whether Section 230 needs to be updated, maybe even completely overhauled, right?
Yeah. So some people argue that it gives these tech giants too much power, while others say that it's essential for protecting free speech online. It's a really tough debate.
And it's not just a theoretical debate either. Like, Rumble is actually suing California over a new law that they say would basically ban political satire. Yeah, Pavlovsky even compared it to something you might see in, like, North Korea.
Wow. That's a pretty strong statement.
It is, but it highlights how tricky this whole thing is. Like, how do you define satire? Where do you draw the line? It's a really tough question with no easy answers, and it could have major consequences for how we talk about and debate important issues online.
It definitely makes you think about, like, the future of free speech online
Mm.
and who gets to decide what's acceptable and what's not.
Exactly. But we'll dive more into that in part two. For now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something else that caught our attention in the interview. Rumble's love affair with Bitcoin. Like, they're not just talking about it, they're actually putting their money where their mouth is. They just invested like $20 million in Bitcoin as part of their treasury strategy.
Whoa, 20 million. That's a lot of Bitcoin.
It is. And, Bitcoin's known for being pretty volatile.
Yeah, for sure. It goes up and down like crazy.
So what's the deal? Why is Rumble, like, all in on Bitcoin?
Well, it's part of this whole trend of companies adopting a Bitcoin treasury strategy. Basically, they're seeing it as like a hedge against inflation. Like
Mhm.
maybe traditional currencies are losing their value, so they're turning to Bitcoin as a more stable alternative.
Interesting. So it's like a way to protect their assets in uncertain times.
Right. And some companies also see it as a way to, like, align themselves with this whole decentralized ethos of cryptocurrency.
Mm.
You know, like they're showing that they believe in this idea of a more open and transparent financial system.
That makes sense. But it's not just about Rumble holding Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Pavlovsky also talked about Rumble creators getting paid in Bitcoin. Like, imagine getting paid in crypto for your videos or podcasts.
Yeah, that would be pretty wild. It really makes you think about the future of cryptocurrency and how it could change the way we create and consume content online. Like, what if Bitcoin becomes the standard way for people to pay for online content?
Right. It could be a total game changer.
It could. But it also raises a lot of questions, like how would that work in practice? What about taxes and regulations and, the whole volatility thing? There's still a lot to figure out.
For sure. But hey, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. So, we've talked about big tech trying to make nice with politicians, the fight for free speech online, and Rumble's big bet on Bitcoin.
It's like a whole new world out there.
It is, but we've only just scratched the surface. There's still so much more to unpack, so be sure to join us for part 2, where we'll go even deeper into this fascinating world of online platforms and the fight for control of the internet. It's going to be a wild ride. So last time we were talking about Rumble, you know, and that lawsuit they filed against California.
Oh, right. Over that law about political satire.
Yeah, that's the one. I mean, it might seem, I don't know, kind of random. Like, why focus on satire?
What could actually have a huge impact for, all online platforms.
Right.
And how they handle content moderation, it's a big deal.
I guess so. But satire, I mean, hasn't that always been around?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it's always been tricky. What one person thinks is funny, someone else might find offensive. And that makes it really hard to, regulate.
Especially online, right? Where things can go viral so fast.
Exactly. So this whole debate
Yeah.
about what is and isn't acceptable satire, it's not just theoretical. It has real consequences.
And California, with that law, it seems like they're trying to, define what's okay to joke about.
Right. And that's what Rumble's pushing back against. They're
Yeah.
saying, hey, you can't just decide what we can and cannot laugh at.
So it's a First Amendment issue for them.
Exactly. They're saying this law violates their right to free speech.
Yeah.
And it's not just about Rumble, really. This case, it could set a precedent for other platforms, even individual creators.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, that's a big deal. What happens with this case, it could affect how we talk about and debate all sorts of issues online.
So it's not just about satire, it's about, the future of online discourse in general.
Right. And that raises some pretty big questions, are we headed towards a more fragmented internet, where different platforms have totally different rules?
Almost like a digital Wild West,
Right.
where anything goes.
In a way, yeah. But on the other hand, having one set of rules for everyone, that could also be a problem.
It might stifle creativity and free expression.
Exactly. So figuring out how to protect free speech while also protecting people from harmful content, it's going to be a huge challenge going forward.
Huge. But it sounds like no matter what, things are going to be changing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The internet's constantly evolving. And we're just starting to see how these new technologies, these platforms and cryptocurrencies and everything are going to reshape how we interact and share information.
So how do we even begin to navigate this new world, with all these changes happening?
Well, first of all, we need to be informed. We need to understand what's going on, and we need to think critically about the information we're seeing online.
Not just take everything at face value.
Right. And maybe even more importantly, we need to be willing to talk to each other, even when we disagree.
That's good advice. I think it's easy to get stuck in your own little echo chamber online. But it's important to hear different perspectives.
Absolutely. And, we can make choices too, like which platforms we use, how we engage in discussions. It all makes a difference.
So you're saying, we're not just passive consumers. We can
Yeah.
actually help shape the future of the internet.
Exactly. We all have a role to play. So how does Rumble fit into all of this? Are they just another platform? Or are they something different?
Well, they're definitely trying to shake things up. And that whole Bitcoin thing, I mean, that's a pretty big statement.
Right. It shows that they're not afraid to challenge the status quo and that they're willing to take risks.
So it's not just about making money. It's about something bigger.
It's about creating a new model for how the internet can work and how creators and fans can interact.
It's pretty fascinating stuff. But let's be honest, Bitcoin can be a little intimidating.
It can. I mean, it's still relatively new.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't really understand it. But, think about the early days of the internet.
People probably thought that was weird, too.
Exactly. And look at how much it's changed the world. So who knows? Maybe Bitcoin will do the same thing for finance.
Maybe. It's definitely something to watch. All right, so we're back, and it's time to really unpack this whole Bitcoin thing.
Yeah, we've talked about Rumble's fight for free speech and all the legal battles, but this Bitcoin thing, it's a whole other level.
It is. It really is. So they put millions of dollars into Bitcoin as part of their, what was it, treasury strategy?
Right, treasury strategy.
Yep.
And it was a big statement, like they're really putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah. And Bitcoin, it's still, I don't know, kind of a mystery to a lot of people.
It is. It's this whole new world. And remember how we've been talking about how Rumble wants to, like, break away from the traditional power structures of big tech?
Mm.
Well, this is another example of that.
So they're not just trying to create a different kind of platform. They're trying to create a different kind of, like, financial system.
Exactly. They're embracing this idea of decentralization, not just for content, but for money, too.
And it makes sense in a way. Like, if you're trying to build a platform that's all about free speech and individual empowerment, well, Bitcoin kind of fits into that, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole thing about Rumble creators getting paid in Bitcoin.
Right. Imagine that. Getting paid in crypto for your videos or your podcasts or whatever.
It's a pretty wild idea.
Yeah.
Like, what if that became the norm? What if creators didn't have to rely on these big platforms to handle their money?
It could really change things, couldn't it? Like, give more power to the creators.
Absolutely. And it could also open up a lot of possibilities for creators in different parts of the world, where traditional banking might not be so easy.
That's a good point. Bitcoin doesn't care about borders.
Nope. So it could create this, like, global community of creators and fans all connected through crypto. Pretty exciting to think about.
It is exciting. But I have to ask, what about all the, the critics? The people who say Bitcoin is too risky or too volatile or whatever.
Those are valid concerns for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still a new technology and it's not perfect. But you have to remember, the internet was kind of like that too in the beginning.
Yeah, people were scared of it.
Right. And look at it now.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe Bitcoin will follow a similar path. Maybe it will become more mainstream, more stable.
It's definitely a gamble, though, isn't it?
It is. It's a gamble. But Rumble, they seem willing to take that gamble. They're betting on the future, and they're not afraid to be different.
I kind of admire that.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's refreshing, actually, to see a company that's willing to challenge the status quo and to really think outside the box.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap things up, don't you?
I think so.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. Big tech, free speech, censorship, Bitcoin, the future of the internet.
And it all comes back to this idea of control. Like, who has the power, and how is that power shifting?
Exactly. And what does it mean for us? For the average person who just wants to, connect with others and share their ideas.
That's the big question, isn't it?
Right.
And I don't think there are any easy answers, but one thing's for sure.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
It is. So to all our listeners out there, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking questions. Because the future of the internet, it's not just something that happens to us. It's something we create together.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a wild ride.
It has.
And until next time, keep exploring.